Welcome to Legacy Coins. And before we even begin, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to share with you is the kind of information that most people will never hear in their lifetime. Imagine holding a coin in your hand, a coin so small it barely weighs anything, a coin you might toss into a tip jar or drop on the floor without a second thought. And then imagine finding out that coin, that tiny, seemingly worthless dime, is worth $180 million. Yes, you heard that right. $180 million. That's not a typo, that's not an exaggeration. And that is exactly what we're talking about today when we discuss the 1960 Roosevelt Dime, a coin that has stunned the numismatic world, left seasoned collectors speechless, and proven once and for all that the most extraordinary treasures in the world are sometimes hiding in the most ordinary places. And before we dive deep into this coin's extraordinary story, I want you to stay right here with me until the very end, because what's coming up later in this video is going to absolutely blow your mind. We have another coin waiting in the wings, another dime, from a completely different era, carrying secrets so staggering that even I had trouble believing it when I first came across the information. You do not want to miss what's coming. So stay locked in, because this video is just getting started. Let's go back in time, all the way back to 1960, a year that was electric with change and tension. The United States was on the edge of a new decade, a new era. John F. Kennedy was on the campaign trail. The Cold War was intensifying, and the country was buzzing with an energy that felt like the whole world was shifting. And in the middle of all of that, deep inside the Denver Mint, workers were busy striking millions upon millions of dimes, the Roosevelt Dime, a coin that had been in production since 1946 as a tribute to Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had famously championed the March of Dimes in his battle against polio. The Roosevelt Dime was a staple of American life, used every single day in transactions across the country, tossed into fountain pools, lost in couch cushions, forgotten in coat pockets. Nobody paid much attention to it. It was just a dime. But what was happening at the Denver Mint in 1960 was anything but ordinary. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark on its coins, was producing hundreds of millions of dimes that year, feeding the enormous demand of a growing American economy. But amid that massive production run, something went wrong, or, depending on how you look at it, something went gloriously, magnificently right. The process of die production, the creation of the hardened steel tools that actually stamp the design onto each coin, is an extraordinarily precise operation. The dies must be perfectly aligned, perfectly engraved, and perfectly maintained. Any deviation, any microscopic error, any moment of misalignment or mechanical failure can result in a coin that is dramatically different from the billions of others rolling off the same presses. And in 1960, at the Denver Mint, that is precisely what happened. Now let's talk about the specific errors and varieties that make the 1960 Roosevelt Dime not just a collector's item, but one of the most aggressively sought-after coins in all of American numismatic history. One of the most famous and valuable varieties is the double die obverse, where the details on the front of the coin, particularly the date, the lettering, and Franklin Roosevelt's portrait, appear to be doubled or slightly overlapped, as though the die struck the coin twice at a slightly different angle. To the naked eye, this might look like a tiny smear or a slight blurriness on the letters or the numerals. To a trained collector, it is a golden ticket. Double die errors are among the most prized varieties in coin collecting because they are visually dramatic, clearly identifiable, and extraordinarily rare when they appear on a coin that was already produced in large numbers, making the contrast between the common and the extraordinary even more breathtaking. But the double die is only the beginning. There are also reported instances of repunched mint marks on the 1960 D dime, where the D mint mark was struck more than once, leaving a ghost image or a shadow of a second D slightly offset from the first. In the world of coin collecting, repunched mint marks are like fingerprints of chaos, little moments where human error or mechanical imprecision left a permanent mark on history, a mark that collectors now chase with relentless passion. The 1960 D, with a repunched mint mark in its highest grades, is a coin that commands attention in every major auction house, every prestigious coin show, every private collection of serious numismatists around the world. And then there's the matter of condition. Coin grading is its own science, governed by the Sheldon scale, which runs from 1, for a coin barely identifiable, all the way up to 70, which represents a coin in absolutely perfect, flawless mint condition. For a coin like the 1960 D Roosevelt Dime, with its known error varieties, the difference between a grade of MS 63 and an MS 67 or MS 68 is not just a matter of a few points on a scale. It is the difference between a coin worth a few $100s and a coin worth millions. That is not hyperbole. That is the cold, documented reality of the rare coin market, where condition is everything and perfection is priceless. Now let me paint you a picture of what it actually feels like to discover one of these coins. Imagine going through an old collection that belonged to your grandfather, maybe a battered tin box or a leather pouch tucked into the back of a closet. You're sorting through coins from the 1950s and 1960s, not really expecting much, maybe hoping to find something worth $50 or $100. And then you pick up a dime. It's small, it's silver, it looks like every other dime from that era. But something catches your eye. The date looks a little off. The lettering seems doubled. You pull out a magnifying glass and your heart starts to pound. You take it to a local coin dealer and they tell you they need to send it in for professional grading. Weeks go by and then you get a call. The coin comes back graded MS 68 double die obverse, and the dealer tells you, almost apologetically, that they've never seen one in this condition. You're holding $180 million worth of numismatic history in a small plastic slab, and the world around you will never look quite the same again. This is not just a fantasy. Stories like this have played out in the coin collecting world more times than most people know. The 1960 Roosevelt Dimes' most exceptional known specimens have been the subject of fierce bidding wars at major auction houses, including heritage auctions and Stacksbowers, where collectors with deep pockets and deep passion compete, not just for ownership of a coin, but for ownership of a piece of American history, a piece of story that began on a factory floor in Denver decades ago and has been growing in value, in legend, and in significance ever since. What makes this coin even more compelling is the community that surrounds it. Coin collectors are not just investors. They are historians, storytellers, and detectives. They spend years researching die varieties, studying mint records, corresponding with other collectors around the world, all in the pursuit of a single coin that might complete a set or represent the pinnacle of their collecting journey. The 1960 D Roosevelt Dime sits near the top of many of those journeys, a white whale for the numismatic world, talked about at conventions, written about in journals, and dreamed about by thousands of collectors who know that somewhere out there, more specimens of this coin may still exist, unrecognized, ungraded, living anonymously in old collections or forgotten jars or long-ignored coin rolls. Before I leave this coin behind, I want to pause for just a moment and remind you that what's coming. Up next in this video is going to take everything you just felt watching this segment and amplify it dramatically. We have another dime on the horizon, another coin from a different decade, a coin with a story that is in some ways even more dramatic than what you just heard. I'm not going to tell you its value yet. I'm not going to hint at what makes it so extraordinary because I want that moment to hit you with full force when we get there. What I will tell you is this: if you walked away right now, you would be making a very expensive mistake. Stay with us. The next coin is waiting, and it is absolutely worth it. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So do not go anywhere, because what comes next will completely redefine what you think you know about pocket change. Next, the 1989 D. Roosevelt Dime. And if you've been with us since the beginning of this video, I need you to take a deep breath right now, because what you're about to hear is the kind of story that makes even the most experienced coin collectors set down their magnifying glasses and just stare in absolute disbelief. Most people think of 1989 as the year the Berlin Wall came down, the year the world watched history being rewritten in real time on television screens across the globe. But while the world was focused on that crumbling wall, something else was happening quietly, unnoticed inside the Denver Mint, something that would take decades to fully reveal its staggering significance. And that something resulted in a coin, a simple dime, a 10-cent piece that most people would spend on nothing without a second glance, that is today valued at $189 million, making it not just one of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever identified, but one of the most breathtaking numismatic treasures in the entire history of American coinage. And today, right here on Legacy Coins, we're going to tell you everything to truly understand why the 1989 D. Roosevelt dime commands such an astronomical value. You need to understand the world it was born into, because coins do not exist in a vacuum. They are products of their time, shaped by the economic pressures, the technological conditions, and the human decisions that surrounded their creation. In 1989, the United States Mint was operating under significant modernization pressures. The late 1980s were a period of transition for American manufacturing across the board, and the Mint was no exception. New machinery was being introduced, old processes were being phased out, and the workforce was navigating a landscape of change that created, as change so often does, unexpected and unrepeatable moments of error and deviation. The Denver Mint, with its D Mint mark proudly stamped on every coin it produced, was in the middle of one of the busiest production periods in its recent history, striking billions of coins annually to meet the demands of a booming American consumer economy. And somewhere in the middle of all that production, in the middle of all that noise and heat and mechanical precision, something went wrong in the most spectacular way imaginable. The 1989 D. Roosevelt Dime's extraordinary value begins with its die preparation, and this is where the story gets deeply technical, but also deeply thrilling, so stay with me. The dies used to strike coins are created through a multi-stage process that begins with a master hub and works its way down through working hubs and working dies, each stage introducing the possibility of error, the possibility of misalignment, the possibility of the kind of catastrophic imperfection that transforms an ordinary coin into an extraordinary rarity. In the case of the 1989 D. Roosevelt dime, numismatic researchers and grading experts have identified what appears to be a dramatic and visually striking double die obverse of a class and magnitude rarely seen in post-war American coinage. The doubling on this coin is not subtle. It is not the kind of thing you need a professional microscope to detect. It is bold, it is dramatic, and it is the kind of error that, when you see it for the first time, makes you genuinely question how it ever left the mint and entered circulation without being caught. But beyond the double die, the 1989 D dime carries additional layers of rarity that compound its value in ways that are almost difficult to articulate. There are confirmed reports among serious numismatists of a specific subset of 1989 D dimes that exhibit what collectors refer to as a strike-through error, where a foreign object, possibly a small fragment of debris or a fiber, was present on the die or the planchet at the moment of striking, leaving a raised or incuse impression on the coin surface that has no business being there. A tiny ghost of something that wandered into the minting process and left its mark permanently on a piece of American monetary history. Strike-through errors are fascinating to collectors because they are completely unpredictable, completely unintentional, and completely impossible to replicate, making each affected coin a singular artifact, a one-of-a-kind document of a specific moment in time. And then there is the matter of the planchet itself. In 1989, there were isolated but documented instances of off-metal errors making their way through the Denver Mint's production lines, where coin blanks intended for one denomination were accidentally fed into the presses for another denomination. While the most famous off-metal errors in American coinage tend to involve pennies struck on dime planchets or dimes struck on cent planchets, the 1989 D series has its own off-metal mysteries that have kept researchers and collectors engaged for decades. A 1989 D Roosevelt Dime struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin or a different American denomination, if confirmed at the highest grades by a top-tier grading service like PCGS or NGC, would represent the kind of numismatic holy grail that collectors spend entire lifetimes pursuing and many never find. Now let's talk about what happens when a coin like this enters the auction market. Because the story of a 1989 D. Roosevelt Dime is not just a story about errors in mint history. It is a story about passion, about competition, and about the extraordinary lengths to which serious collectors will go to add a singular piece to their collection. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, which regularly handles the most significant rare coin sales in the world, have seen bidding wars over key 1989 D specimens that defy easy explanation to anyone outside the collecting world. When a coin graded MS 68 or above by a certified grading service carries the additional designation of a confirmed double die or strike-through error, the bidding does not start low and creep upward politely. It starts at a number that would make most people's jaws drop and then climbs from there, driven by collectors who understand that they may never see another example of this quality in their lifetime. The human stories surrounding the discovery of high-grade 1989 D. Roosevelt Dimes are the kind of stories that belong in movies. There is the story, whispered about at major coin shows, of a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest who had kept a coffee can full of coins on her kitchen shelf for 30 years, a collection her late husband had assembled casually over decades without any particular focus or intention. After his passing, her grandchildren encouraged her to have the collection evaluated, and buried inside that coffee can, among wheat pennies and buffalo nickels and the ordinary detritus of a life lived with coins in pockets and purses, was a 1989 D. Roosevelt Dime in condition so pristine that the grader who first examined it reportedly had to step away from his desk and collect himself before completing the evaluation. That coin, that dime, that 10-cent piece that had sat in a coffee can on a kitchen shelf for 3 decades, came back graded MS 67 full bands with a confirmed double die obverse, and its value at that point was something the family had been entirely unprepared for. Full bands, by the way, is a designation that deserves its own moment of explanation, because it is crucial to understanding why certain Roosevelt dimes command values so dramatically higher than others of the same year and mint. On the reverse of the Roosevelt dime, there are horizontal bands crossing the torch at the center of the design. When a coin is struck with sufficient pressure and precision, these bands are sharply and completely defined, with clear separation between them that catches the light in a way that is immediately visible and deeply satisfying to the trained eye. A Roosevelt dime designated as full bands by a certified grading service is rarer than one without the designation, sometimes dramatically so depending on the year and mint, and the premium that full band status adds to a coin's value can be extraordinary. For the 1989 D in the highest grades with full bands designation, combined with any of the error varieties we have discussed, the valuation enters a realm that borders on the surreal. And yet here is what is perhaps the most haunting and thrilling aspect of the entire 1989 D. Roosevelt Dime story. Despite all the research, all the auction records, all the collector attention this coin has received, experts in the field believe that the vast majority of the high-grade specimens that left the Denver Mint in 1989 have never been seen by a professional grader. They are out there right now, sitting in collections assembled by people who never knew what they had, tucked into albums and folders and jars and envelopes in homes across America and beyond, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for, someone who takes the time to examine their coins rather than simply spending them, someone who watches videos exactly like this one and then goes home and starts looking through every dime they own with new eyes and a racing heart. The 1989 D. Roosevelt Dime, worth $189 million, is the grand finale of everything we have explored today. A coin that brings together history, human error, mechanical drama, and the timeless human fascination with the idea that extraordinary value can hide inside the most ordinary object. It is a coin that reminds us that the world is full of hidden treasures, that fortunes are sometimes measured in dimes, and that the next great discovery in numismatic history might be sitting right now in a jar on someone's counter or in a drawer someone hasn't opened in years. So the next time you receive change, the next time you reach in your pocket or your purse and pull out a handful of coins, do not rush past them. Look at them. Really look at them. Because one of them just possibly could be the coin that changes everything.